Ed and Lorraine Warren are names that will be synonymous with demonology forever. But what about their personal facts that no one knows about? Now, those tidbits of information are actually horrific. So I recently had the opportunity to sit down and chat with someone who was allegedly exorcised by the Warrens in their later years. And the entire possession case was a scam, set up to see if these folks could actually trick the experts. So this took place at a haunted house in Connecticut, and the folks there were claiming that some sort of demonic entity was possessing a room in their establishment, and that there was a demonic mask involved, one of their employees was indeed possessed, etc, etc, etc. So Ed and Lorraine made a trip out and claimed, yep, there's something demonic here, and an exorcism was necessary. They were picking up all sorts of readings on their devices, the demons were saying something about wages, and what do you know, this was all fake. Now my friend, who prefers to remain anonymous due to his very public line of work, claimed that the Warrens performed an exorcism on him while he faked being possessed, and only became healed when he realized that the elastic on the cursed mask was about to snap. He was also kind of exhausted from faking being so possessed. So much for expert knowledge. This next little bit of information isn't as terrifying in the traditional sense, but bear with me. So if you watch the film franchise, you'd think Ed and Lorraine had a pretty ideal, wholesome, perfect Americana family-style life, but the reality isn't so shiny or pure. In the early 1960s, Ed Warren initiated a relationship with somebody that was way too young for him, and Lorraine knew about it. Ed Warren was in his mid-30s when he met Judith, who was about half his age. Yeah, yucky. Having not yet gained enough fame as a self-trained demonologist to pay the bills, Ed was working as a city bus driver in Monroe, Connecticut, while Judith was a student in the nearby town of Bridgeport who, well, rode his bus. The two began an amorous relationship, according to a legal declaration from Judith in November of 2014. Turns out by 1963, she had moved into the Warrens' home, and for the next 40 or so years, she had a very close relationship with Ed with Lorraine's knowledge. Well, that same year, Judith was arrested after somebody reported her relationship with Ed to the police. Rightfully so, and she spent a night in the North End prison in Bridgeport while police tried to persuade her to sign a statement admitting to the affair. After she refused to cooperate, she was ordered by the court to report to a delinquent office for the next month. Well, Ed picked her up from school every week and drove her to the mandated meetings. Judith claimed that Ed told her many times that she was the love of his life, and the Warrens explained her presence in the home as a niece or some poor girl they'd taken in out of charity. She helped them out with office tasks. In May of 1978, while in her 30s, Judith became pregnant with Ed's offspring, and Lorraine persuaded her to get rid of it, because that could have been a public scandal. Now, if that wasn't awful enough, Judith has also claimed that Ed was, on occasion, physically offensive to Lorraine. Apparently, there was one night in particular where she saw Ed harm Lorraine to the point where Lorraine lost consciousness. Now, while it might be easy to dismiss all of these claims as hooey or somebody trying to make something out of nothing, there's an interesting element from Lorraine. Yeah, she's talked about this in a way that kind of proves this to be true. So when Lorraine Warren signed on to consult on the Conjuring movies, she got a contract that stated the movies will not feature negative information about the Warrens, mentioning specifically intercourse with folks outside of their marriage, anything to do with women of the night, or violence. Which is kind of weird to have to spell that out if you don't have anything to worry about. Just saying. Do you know how Ed and Lorraine got their start in all this demonology stuff? Because honestly, before I started sharing info with y'all, I never really dug too much into the personal lives of Ed and Lorraine Warren, preferring to focus, interests on their professional work, and I only really knew about their daughter Judy. Yeah, they had a daughter from the rare time they mentioned her in one of their books, and her husband because of all the rare footage he's publicized since their death, which we'll get more on in a moment. So it turns out Lorraine was still in school when she first started seeing auras. She thought this was something everybody saw, but she found out pretty quickly otherwise when she brought it up at her Catholic school. She compared the lights surrounding the Mother Superior and another sister, and was told immediately to never talk of what she saw ever again. So she learned to either hide her gifts or choke it off. Whereas Ed, on the other hand, grew up in a haunted house. He'd look into closets and see faces, one specifically of an old lady. The temperature in his room would drop and he would hear footsteps, heavy breathing, and when he brought it up to his father, he was like, oh, there's a logical explanation for everything. Leave it at that. So Ed and Lorraine both did their very best to try and ignore their gifts. They wanted to live normal lives, but the universe drew them together and had different plans. Ed had a near-death experience while serving in the Navy, and when the ship he was on collided with an oil tanker in the North Atlantic. A fire erupted and everybody had to jump overboard, and as Ed was in the icy water, he prayed for help and was soon rescued, believing it to be from cosmic interference. After that, he returned home, asked Lorraine to marry him, and they got married almost immediately. After the war, Ed took up a profession as a fine arts painter, with the duo traveling from fair to sell their wares, and this became very helpful during the beginnings of their work. They would research houses they believed to be haunted, then drive there, and after Ed would paint the house, he'd hand the painting to Lorraine, she'd go knock on the door and offer the painting to the homeowners as like a ticket inside. So she'd strike up conversation, maybe learn about the hauntings. At one house, which already had some local notoriety as a supernatural hotspot, Lorraine actually went into a spontaneous trance, and claims that's where she learned not to fear death. So, the Jones house was the home of the Jones family, who believed they lived with ghosts. And this all started on one evening in 1993 when the matriarch of the family, Denise, was preparing dinner and she heard her son Michael screaming, like holy terror level. She went to his room and found him curled up, frightened, shaking, and well, screaming. He told her that he saw the face of a strange looking man smiling at him, who touched his shoulder and then disappeared. Poor little one was just this many years old, and this was the beginning of something that would last his entire life. Shortly after the incident, the family was at Denise's parents' house when Michael began yelling again. He told Denise and her parents that a man in a picture on the wall was the same one he had seen in his room. This was Denise's grandfather, who had died 17 years earlier, and Michael had never met him. He'd also never seen a picture of him before. He soon felt better because he felt like his great-grandfather was watching over him. Then he claimed that evil spirits run the house and that they wanted to take him to their side. So Denise brought in a paranormal investigator, John Zaffis, to investigate him and the house. And he's pretty sure that Michael's ghost sightings were genuine. Another ghost that Michael claimed to see was an evil spirit he called the Shadow Man, which was a darker apparition that looks like a shadow that Michael saw every day. Now, his family was like, okay, this is getting a little more dangerous. One night, his parents heard strange thumping noises, and they went up to his room and found his bed shaking violently. On another occasion, Denise saw a shadow of a 6-foot-tall something or another that walked across a wall, which was apparently the Shadow Man. Then Michael claimed that the spirits were physically tormenting him with some physical harm, scratching, and biting. John believed that the spirits were about to possess the son, so Denise was like, okay, whole family's moving, out we go. But it didn't end there. These spirits followed the family. Denise was like, okay, how about an exorcism? I'll call the bishop. They got lucky. Bishop was like, yep, this needs to happen. And during the exorcism, he saw this shadow man at the church. The bishop had Michael drink holy water, which isn't a method I've heard about before. And the family was like, okay, well, if it helps, it helps. Well, it didn't. 3 weeks later, here we go again. Michael underwent 4 more exorcisms. Now, he still sees spirits, but his family's like, hey, maybe one day this is gonna stop. Look, I know Ed Warren would have known just what to do in this situation and ended it for once and for all. Just saying. Alrighty folks, time to travel over to Ireland with this legend. Look, if we know anything about Ed Warren, he loved investigating the legends of ghostly ladies haunting places, and this one is a doozy. Let's see if I get it right. Deag Dú is an Irish word for a female demon that seduces men and drains them of their life source. Iconic. The name literally translates to red consumer of fluids. Oh, well, you get what I mean. An Irish lady who was famous across the land for her beauty and who fell in love with a local peasant against her father's disapproval is said to have been the subject of a tale that originated in Celtic culture. Now, arranged marriages weren't uncommon back then, so centuries ago in the area that is now Waterford, a young girl with beauty so astounding that men were absolutely smitten with her, and woman wanted to be her, was happily living day to day and had the love of a farm laborer. They made plans to marry and have descendants of their own. Granted, her dad, who wasn't a nice guy and cared nothing for love and innocence, was like, no, arranged marriage for you because I want to promise your hand to a wealthy and notoriously atrocious person in charge with a lot of power in exchange for riches and lands for, well, myself and for all of my remaining offspring. So the marriage was arranged, the date was set, and all the begging in the world from our poor bride-to-be was not enough to move the cold, empty heart of her father or her betrothed. So on the day of the wedding, everybody dressed in their finery, and the bride was a vision of beauty, dressed in red, gold, and we're all gonna party throughout the night. But one person sat away from them all, damning her father and vowing to seek revenge on those who had cost her love and life. Turns out this new husband with all this power, he was a little bit harmful. Well, a lot of it harmful, and very controlling, more so than his new wife could have ever imagined. To him, this new wife was nothing but a trophy to be locked away for his pleasure only, savoring the knowledge that she was his and his alone. She was so depressed, I wonder why, so lonely with a complete absence of hope that she just wasted away. Not drinking, not eating, just existing, her life gone long before her body gave in. Her burial was a modest affair. Her husband had already taken another wife before she was cold body. And her family was too much obsessed with their wealth and their greed to give her a second thought. One man did grieve though, her lost love, He visited her grave every single day, telling her of his undying love and praying for her return to his arms. Sadly, his love was not the driving force for her resurrection. Revenge was the force that pulled her from her grave on the first anniversary of her death. Consumed with anger and the need for retribution, she climbed from her coffin and headed straight to her parents' home. As her father lay sleeping, she touched her lips to his and sucked the life out of him. But that wasn't enough. She called upon her callous husband, finding him surrounded by women, fulfilling his lustful desires, and oblivious to the dead bride, and she launched on him, sending everybody else screaming. She was so full of fury and fire that she not only drew every breath, but drained every ounce of red fluid from his twisted and cruel body. Scarlet liquid surging through her, she felt more alive than she had ever been before, and she had a hunger that could not be satisfied. So eager to satisfy this, the love who had wished her back to life was forgotten, and such was his good fortune, for he would have been another victim of her lust. Our corpse bride used her beauty to prey on young men, luring them to their demise with seduction, the promise of her body the reward. Instead, well, she sank her teeth into their exposed necks and drank their fluids to quench her thirst and desire, but it was never enough. The warm, red elixir of life gave her strength and immortality, and she hungered for her next feast. Her remains are buried in Waterford in a place known as Strongbow's Tree. Her lustful yearning can only be satisfied on the day she died, so on the eve of her anniversary, locals gather and position rocks upon her grave so that she will not rise and take the elixir of the innocent. Sometimes the rocks are displaced, forgotten, or her desire is stronger than any stone could ever be, and she walks into the night, tempting folks to fall victim to her beauty and her lust. Look, I feel like Ed Warren could have absolutely put an end to this for once and for all, and probably should have visited this place before he passed, and acknowledged the legend.
The Smurl haunting, a decade of demonic torment. Now imagine your family dog hurled across the room by invisible hands. Imagine hearing moans through the walls, being scratched by unseen claws, and even attacked in your sleep. Now for the Smurl family, this wasn't imagination, it was their daily life. In 1974, Jack and Janet Smurl moved into a duplex in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. Almost immediately, strange activity began. Dark stains appeared on walls and floors, despite repeated cleaning. Now, unexplained foul odors kind of filled the home, often smelling like rotting flesh. The haunting escalated very quickly. Jack and Janet claimed they were physically attacked. Jack reported being scratched, choked, and even essayed by a demonic entity. Now, Janet described similar attacks as well. The couple's daughters were tormented by nightmares and saw black, shadowy figures lurking in the corners of their rooms. Now, their dog was repeatedly picked up and thrown across the room by unseen forces. Loud pounding sounds kind of reverberated through the house at night, shaking the walls. Religious items were destroyed or thrown to the ground. Now, when the Warrens were called in, they determined the house was infested with demons. Ed claimed he recorded more than 40 hours of audio containing unexplained knocks, growls, and even screams. Priests attempted several exorcisms, but the attacks continued. The Smurls endured the haunting for nearly 15 years. They later wrote a book about their ordeal titled The Haunted, which was adapted into a made-for-TV movie in the early 90s. Critics dismissed their story as just exaggeration, but to the Smurl family, it was very real, and the trauma stayed with them long after they left the house. The Brookfield Devil Made Me Do It trial. Now, in 1981, an assassination shocked a quiet Connecticut town. But what stunned the nation was the defense. A man claimed he was possessed by a demon when he was unalived, and standing behind him in court were Ed and Lorraine Warren. But what stunned the nation was the defense, a man who claimed he was possessed by a demon. Now, Arn Cheyenne Johnson was a 19-year-old living with his fiancée Debbie Glatzel. Debbie's younger brother, David, had been experiencing terrifying possessions. He would thrash violently, growl in strange voices, and describe visions of a demonic beast with hooves and horns. The Warrens were brought in to help, of course. Now, during one exorcism attempt, Arn challenged the demon, shouting that it should leave David alone and take him instead. Now, according to the Warrens, that is exactly what happened. Months later, Arn was working with his landlord, Alan Bono. Now, the two men argued, and in a sudden fit, Arn basically hurt Bono multiple times with a weapon. Now, it actually unalived him. Now, witnesses described this behavior as possessed, claiming his eyes looked wild and his voice had changed. When the case went to trial, Arn's lawyer attempted a groundbreaking defense, not guilty by reason of demonic possession. This was the first time in U.S. history that such a plea was entered into court. The Warrens testified, insisting that a demon had indeed taken control of him. Now, the judge, however, rejected the argument, stating that demonic possession could never be proven in a court of law. obviously. Now, Arnn was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 10 to 20 years, though he served only just 5. Now, the case made international headlines and cemented the Warrens' reputation as controversial figures who weren't afraid to take the supernatural into the public eye. It also became the basis for the best-selling book, and decades later, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. Now, to this day, Arnn and Debbie insist the possession was real, and the Warrens considered this case one of the most dangerous of their whole career. Now, which Warren case were you not familiar with? Maybe all, maybe none, let me know. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Ashley. I'll creep you later. Take a trip with me on the most haunted train still running today. Buckle up, it's about to get bumpy. Blackpool Pleasure Beach Ghost Train. This is in England. They say the scariest rides aren't roller coasters. They're the ones that look harmless at first until you realize the terror doesn't come from the machinery at all. In Blackpool, England, there's a ride that's been operating since the 1930s. Generations have lined up for it, expecting just another creaky amusement ride. What they didn't expect, though, was a ghost that refuses to leave. It's called the Ghost Train at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Now, on the surface, it's just a funfair ride, a dark tunnel filled with jump scares and mechanical figures. But what makes this ride infamous is not the cheesy props or the dated horror music. It's the presence of a former ride operator who locals call Cloggy. Now, he earned the nickname because of his habit of wearing wooden clogs. Their heavy tapping echoing across the floor, if you know what those shoes are. Now, he passed away decades ago, yet visitors still hear the sound of those clogs pacing behind them. Some claim they felt a sharp nudge or a tap on their shoulder.
Just so we all have the same context going into this next bit, the White Lady is the name of the ghost that haunts the Union Cemetery in Easton, Connecticut. A lot of locals believe her to be the ghost of Harriet Seeley, whose young son passed shortly after being born, with Harriet herself passing soon afterward. Legend believes she may have died in hopes of finding her son. She still wanders their final resting place, searching him out. Now, other folks think maybe she's the ghost of a woman from the 1940s who killed her husband and later took her own life and is doomed to wander the graveyard. Her physical description is the one thing that remains consistent. She's a young woman wearing a white dress with dark hair, and it seems like she enjoys scaring the living daylights out of anybody. Many who have witnessed her believe they have almost hit her with their vehicle, only to find no trace of her once they pull over, whereas other folks claim they have seen her hovering slightly above the ground around the cemetery, going back and forth amongst the different tombstones. So Ed Warren was absolutely obsessed with her. He's gone on record. He was determined to capture footage of this white lady, and once upon a time he was able to do so, and he kept the tape for himself. Yeah, he hoarded that tape like it held the secrets to the universe, or like he was the US government with all the proof they have of alien life. He allowed a very select few people to view it while it was being held in his personal archives, and nobody was allowed to analyze it on their own time. Ever since the passing of both Ed and Lorraine, their son-in-law, Tony Spera, has released the footage in its entirety to YouTube. If you look at the tape, it shows an apparent white human figure moving behind some tombstones. Like videos of UFOs, Bigfoot, other cryptids, the figure is at a perfect distance and resolution so that you can see a shape, but you don't see any definitive details. Remember Judith Penny? So when Ed claimed to have captured the White Lady on tape, apparently Judith was the mystical being spotted on tape. She just masked herself with a white sheet. Oldest trick in the book. By the way, has anyone ever stopped to try and legitimize most of the junk in the Warren Museum? Let's get the facts straight. Ed and Lorraine were investigating numerous cases from like the 1950s until they passed, right? And they founded a whole society devoted to the research and investigation of the paranormal in 1952. Not to mention their entire museum dedicated to objects from their cases. So explain to me how their website only has 10 public case files, and a lot of the stuff in their museum looks like leftovers from a Spirit Halloween. Doesn't anybody else find it pretty suspicious that we only get details from their really big news cases, while artifacts from other lesser cases are barely a footnote and have no story or witnesses attached? So if you're gonna look at a tour of the museum, in one corner is the skin of a tiger that is said to have killed 33 people in India while possessed by a demonic spirit. But when I try to research this weird tiger, I find no account of any reportings in history about such a case, or any offers from Ed and Lorraine to go into detail about any events leading to how it came into their possession. You got a lot of the photos. Given what I know about modern day Satanism, one of the idols in the museum looks like a papier-mâché alien mock-up. Fun fact, folks, a lot of people who practice Satanism don't actually pray to any sort of idol or to the devil.
The Perrin family haunting, Bathsheba's curse. Now, if you've ever felt someone watching you in your own home, multiply that by 10, and then imagine that someone wants you gone or deceased. Now, the Perrin family lived through it for years inside a farmhouse where shadows whispered, beds levitated, and a spirit that once nursed children began trying to harm them. In 1971, Roger and Carolyn Perrin, along with their 5 daughters, moved into an 18th century farmhouse in Harris Morrisville, Rhode Island. Now, at first, it seemed like a charming old property, but soon the family realized they weren't alone. The girls reported hearing voices in the night, objects disappeared, doors slammed without warning, and the family dog refused to enter the house. The most frightening presence was a womanly figure in a gray dress, often described as tall, thin, and with a crooked neck. Sometimes she appeared loving, brushing the girls' hair. Other times she turned violent, pinching, slapping, and even threatening them. Now, Lorraine Warren believed this was the spirit of Bathsheba Sherman, a woman who lived in the area during the 1800s. Now, local legends said Bathsheba had sacrificed her own infant to the devil, and when accused of witchcraft, she cursed the land before unaliving herself. The parent children began waking up with bruises and scratches. Carolyn, the mother, was especially targeted. On one occasion, her body was overtaken during a seance conducted by the Warrens. She spoke in strange voices, her chair levitated, and she screamed with such force that family members thought she would probably pass away. Now, Roger, terrified for his wife's life, demanded the Warrens leave the house immediately. The parents endured the haunting for nearly a decade before they could finally move out. Even decades later, the daughters have spoken publicly describing the horrors they faced, voices whispering their names, dark figures standing at the foot of their beds, and the feeling that their house wanted to consume them. This case became the inspiration for the film The Conjuring, but the reality was far more disturbing. Unlike in Hollywood, there was no happy resolution. For the parents, the horror simply became part of their lives. The Enfield Poltergeist, London's haunted house. Now, a young girl is thrown across her bedroom by invisible hands while her sister watches in terror. Photographs capture her mid-air, seemingly levitating, and in the darkness, a guttural voice growls from the mouth of a child, "This is my house." That was Enfield, 1977. Now, the Hodgson family lived very modest, council house in Enfield, London. It became, though, one of the center of one of the most famous poltergeist cases in history. 11-year-old Janet Hodgson was often the focus. Now, furniture slid across the floor, toys hurled themselves across the room. Witnesses, including police officers and reporters, swore they saw Janet levitate nearly a foot above her bed. The entity didn't just move objects, it actually spoke in a very gravely voice. It seemed almost impossible for a child to be able to mimic it, and it identified itself as Bill Wilkins, a man who claimed to have passed away in the house. When pressed, the voice revealed details about Wilkins' demise, details later confirmed by the neighbors. Now, the Warrens visited, the house, and though they weren't the lead investigators, Ed believed the poltergeist was demonic in origin, not just, the restless spirit of Bill Wilkins. Now, he claimed there were multiple entities feeding off the chaos and fear of the family. The controversy lies in whether the haunting was real or fabricated. Skeptics argued that Janet faked some of this, phenomena, and there is footage, though, of her bending spoons or throwing objects herself, but believers point out the sheer number of witnesses, including journalists and police officers, who experienced, very unexplainable events firsthand. Now, to this day, the Enfield Poltergeist remains one of the most debated hauntings of all time. Whether it's a hoax, or horror, the case basically cemented the Warrens' reputation and inspired The Conjuring 2. Annabelle, the doll that crawled in the night. Now, picture this. You wake up in the middle of the night, frozen in bed, unable to move, and suddenly feel a small pair of cloth arms climbing onto your chest. You look down, and the doll sitting in your living room earlier that night is now straddling your torso. Its lifeless button eyes staring directly into yours. Now, that's exactly what one man described before he discovered there were scratches across his chest. Now, the story of Annabelle began in 1970 when two young nurses students in Hartford, Connecticut, actually received a Raggedy Ann doll as a gift. Now, at first, it was nothing more than a cute decoration, something to brighten their apartment, but almost immediately they began noticing very strange behavior. The doll would be left in one room only to be discovered in another room. Now, sometimes it would be slumped in a chair with its legs crossed, other times kneeling on the floor as if it were praying. Soon, scraps of paper appeared around the apartment, kind of with chilling messages like "help us" or "help Lou." Now, neither of the women owned this paper, nor did they keep any writing utensils near the doll. Now, the haunting escalated when Lou, a fiance of one of the roommates, had a terrifying encounter. He was napping when he felt paralyzed, unable to move, as the doll climbed onto his chest. Seconds later, he felt a burning pain. When he finally regained control, he pulled up his shirt to find very long claw marks, basically right across his stomach. Now, the woman contacted a medium who told them the spirit of a little girl named Annabelle Higgins had attached itself to the doll. Believing it to be harmless, they gave the spirit permission to stay. But Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were called in shortly after, strongly disagreed. Lorraine insisted this was not the spirit of a child, but a very demonic entity masquerading as one's something, that's been kind of manipulating the girls into letting it remain. Now, fearing that the spirit's endgame was possession, the Warrens removed the doll from the apartment. They performed a cleansing and brought it back to their occult museum in Monroe, Connecticut. Now, to this day, Annabelle is locked in a glass case with a very large warning sign saying positively do not open. Ed often claimed the doll had been responsible for at least one man's demise. After a visitor to the museum mocked Annabelle, he supposedly then crashed his motorcycle and passed away hours later. This wasn't just a creepy toy. I mean, to the Warrens, Annabelle was one of the most dangerous artifacts they had ever encountered. Kind of something dark and intelligent that used innocence as a disguise.
Number 2, the Haunted Pearl Necklace. The Haunted Pearl Necklace is also referred to as the Pearls of Death. This jewelry's effects are pretty obvious. The necklace is known as one of the most dangerous items within the Warrens Occult Museum, so yeah, it's living up to its name already. The Pearls of Death is a cursed necklace that has a curse or entity residing in it, causing anyone who wears it to be strangled, and in some cases even strangled so brutally that their lives are ended. Yeah. Death by a necklace. I'm starting to rethink my stance on that gorgeous blue diamond necklace. If you know, you know. It's an inside joke. Only my faves know what I'm talking about. One of their former owners commonly reported being choked while wearing them, even waking up with red marks on her neck after sleeping in them. The pearls are also extremely difficult to remove. Well, they're difficult to remove from the living. Ed and Lorraine Warren kept these pearls heavily guarded and surveyed, and if you're like me, the word surveyed raises excited alarm bells. That's right. Within the museum, several security cameras are placed, which not only protect the artifacts, but also monitor any strange activity. In one surveillance clip, which was privately distributed by an anonymous source who had regular access to the museum, revealed a myriad of strange activities surrounding the pearls. The video captures the pearls vibrating ever so slightly before a small light emanates from them, and a dark shadow quickly shifts towards the ground, as though it was water flowing out of the pearls. These events repeated night after night, typically around 4:24 a.m., with the effects being weaker the further away they get from the stated time. Whether Ed and Lorraine were aware of the footage being leaked to a select group of people, they never addressed it. They didn't even deny it. I suppose they figured ignoring the footage completely would decrease the interest in it, and hey, they were right. I'd never heard of it until now.
And finally, in first place, we have footage of an American exorcism. While the video is blurred out on YouTube to protect the identity of the poor girl, I personally think it's up there as one of the most frightening things I've ever seen. At an hour and 20 minutes long, it depicts a Catholic bishop in Connecticut attempting to converse with a demonic entity that has possessed the body of an innocent young woman, while her family restrains her. Ed and Lorraine were the ones to alert the church to the possession after meeting her during an audience chat session that was held at the conclusion of one of their public presentations. During portions of the exorcism when prayer is done, you can hear the demon acting wildly, and it originally refuses to give its name, both of which are quite common in cases of demonic possession. Eventually we learn that there are 4 demons possessing our victim, with one of them identifying themselves as Robert, which happens to be a name associated with the son of Satan. I'll let a snippet roll now, allowing you to hear the woman for yourself.
Number 4. Ed Warren invoking a spirit on camera. Coming up next is this video uploaded by Tony Spera, the Warrens' son-in-law, on his personal YouTube channel. If you're a fan of the Warrens and you're not already, I would recommend subscribing to Tony Spera. He puts all sorts of Warren-related clips up on the channel, and it's fun. Now, it's hard to say much about this particular video because it was uploaded without a whole lot of context. The video doesn't really mention a date, a location, or a case, or anything else like that. It's a bit troublesome because the Warrens have said to have worked on hundreds of cases over the years, so this could be any one of them, or maybe it's just one of the lesser, less exciting cases that got pushed to the side. They can't all get made into movies, Now, in the video, we can see Ed filming what looks like a fairly normal 70s living room, although the room is definitely haunted. You can tell right away from that liminal yellow wallpaper color. You can hear Ed Warren yelling out the name of Jesus Christ in an attempt to provoke the spirit into appearing. It's said that during an exorcism, to get a spirit or a demon or a ghost to reveal itself, you need to invoke the name of Jesus Christ, put a little fear of God into him. After about a minute of some serious invoking, it seems like Ed is finally getting through to the spirit because we see the table and chairs slide across the ground as if they're being pushed backwards by some incredible invisible force. Now, We don't really see anything more exciting or spiritual than the chairs and tables getting pushed, but that's pretty exciting nonetheless. There's not a ton of footage from the Warrens while they were, working the field, so it's pretty exciting to see whenever we get opportunities like this though. Of course, I do hear you saying this could just be faked. So is this the footage of a ghost caught on camera, or is this nothing more than a faked video to drum up some attention back in the day, like an original CGI hoax video on TikTok? Number 3, driveway alien. Ed and Lorraine Warren got involved in all sorts of things. It's said that they've tussled with vampires, with werewolves. Now, we don't have it on 100% authority that they ever encountered aliens, but they definitely could have. They researched everything. So let's take a look at this weird video of what looks to be a visitor from another world touching down on the driveway. You wouldn't expect aliens to make first contact in Colorado, but hey, here we are. In this video, we can see a really scrawny little creature walking up and down Vivian Gomez's driveway. The creature had people talking because, well, take a look at it. Just what is it? It almost looks like it's got giant ears flopping around when it moves, and I'm not gonna lie to you, it reminds me a lot of Dobby from Harry Potter, so maybe he just got a sock and he's just celebrating his happiness and he's excited to be free. The woman whose driveway caught the security footage, one Vivian Gomez, had this to offer when she posted it on Facebook. So I woke up on Sunday morning and saw this on my camera, and I'm trying to figure out what the heck. First, I saw the shadow walking from my front door, then I saw this thing. Has anyone else seen this on their cameras? The other 2 cameras didn't pick it up for some reason. Sadly, her security camera only films for about 10 seconds or so, so this is the only footage that she was able to capture of this mysterious driveway creature. Gomez clarified for everyone that whatever it was wasn't her son. Okay, we weren't thinking that, but now we're definitely not thinking that, because she doesn't let him out by himself that late, although that opens up a lot of questions. She saw something strange running around her driveway at night and considered the possibility that that might be her son. Like I said, I'm pretty sure the most likely possibility is that this is a freed house elf excited for the future, or a very confused alien. Could be an alien that just touched down. Maybe a Terminator traveling through time. That's why it looked naked. Gang, you let me know what you think what this mystery monster could have been down below. Number 2, Jharkhand. Coming up next is a clip out of India that went viral last year and captured the attention of paranormal enthusiasts, alien hunters, and skeptics alike. I like when you can get everybody all in together and like that. You see something weird on camera, we're like, is this an alien? Is this a ghost? Is this a demon? I'm not sure, but let's all take a look at it. A strange humanoid-like figure was spotted walking across the road in India, confusing everybody. Whatever it was filmed walking alone steadily on a bridge at night in Jharkhand in eastern India, staggering around through the night. Now the thing looks human, and my brain initially is like, yeah, that's a human. But the more you look at it, the more you start to wonder if maybe, just maybe, this might have crawled out of something. This creature is gangly, and it has these long arms and long pale white skin and very skinny, and it looks like something out of Silent Hill. Motorcyclists were swerving out of the way of this figure, which stops and stares at them for a bit before continuing to stroll onwards. Now naturally, this got people talking, because it's not every day you see a terrifying pale figure like that. More than a few people suggested that it could be an alien walking around the streets at night, explaining why it seems so confused. Others suggested that it could be a ghost, which would be pretty spooky. I would say it does seem like it's physically present. It seems like it's physically on the road, so I'm not 100% that it's a ghost. And finally, there's the realists, who have suggested that this could just be someone who had a long night and is lost and on all the substances right now, just trying to get a good night's sleep. As far as I know, no one has cracked this case, certainly not Ed and Lorraine Warren, so we may never have a satisfying answer.
So this episode examined 3 cases of spontaneous human combustion, 2 of which ended in death, with the third being that of Kay Fletcher, a woman who says that one morning her back started emitting smoke that smelled like burned flesh, but she was unharmed. One expert said that SHC could be the result of internal electric currents causing a spark that ignites the body like a wick. Well, one skeptic was like, yeah, okay. Once again, Ed Warren would have had some answers. I'm no expert, but it sounds like demonic possession to me. Now, which demon? That I can't answer without knowing more. My knowledge isn't specific enough. But some demon out there had to be involved with this. I know this is a redundant statement to most, but throughout history there have been multiple paninis that have brought the entire world to a standstill. Well, we all know about the most recent one. It turns out that one of the least known ones is the sleeping sickness of the early 20th century. To be specific, between 1915 and 1926, around the same time the influenza thing ravaged the world, a sleeping disease claimed the lives of more than 500,000 people. Known scientifically as encephalitis lethargica, this disease left sufferers in a statue-like condition, unable to speak or move their bodies. In fact, some patients who survived it reportedly never gained full control of their motor functions ever again. Although the disease mysteriously just disappeared in 1927, scientists remain puzzled over its origin and cause, as well as how was this transmitted? I don't know, folks. Sounds pretty supernatural to me. Alrighty, we're ending today with another case I learned about from an Unsolved Mysteries episode. So 2 weeks after disappearing in 1989, Cindy James was found dead near an abandoned house with her arms and legs bound behind her back and a nylon stocking around her neck. An autopsy revealed that her actual cause of death was a not-so-fun substance situation, and the police ruled it a self-inflicted death, which would be bizarre enough on its own had James not reported being harassed and physically attacked by an unknown assailant for the last 7 years. She first received threatening notes and phone calls, discovered dead cats hanging in her garden, had her phone wires cut, her house was nearly burned down, and was attacked 5 times. Once in her home where she was impaled through the hand with a paring kitchen utensil, and another time when she was found battered and suffered from hypothermia in a ditch on the side of the road. So the police, who they never tested for prints, never thoroughly searched for evidence, they were like, you're making this up. Sure. Because somebody's gonna go to those lengths to make up a story. A lot of that isn't even possible to self-inflict. So after her death, one doctor was like, ooh, you know what? I think she's got multiple personalities, and one of the split Cindys killed the other. If I'm starting to sound angry, it's because I am, folks. She was tormented for 7 years and ended up dead. According to experts, this has always been a real puzzler, and it's like, yeah, you don't say. It's really hard to believe that she could have taken the substances and then also hogtied herself. Look, I think we can rule out an accident. As for the multiple personalities claim, well, it's a theory. I know Ozzy Caban, the private investigator who worked with her for years, was absolutely certain she was being stalked and then she was killed. Her family didn't think she was having any psychological issues. It's just hard to imagine somebody inflicting that kind of pain, where there's actually a weapon going through her hand. The big question is, who would keep this up for 7 years? Some folks really thought this girl was possessed, and look, I know Ed Warren would have absolutely proven them wrong in an instant and believed and advocated for this poor girl. He would have known this wasn't demonic possession or multiple personalities.
Number 5. The White Lady Ghost. Among the Warrens' career of demonology was this peculiar case involving a local Connecticut legend, the White Lady Ghost of Union Cemetery. Whoosh, that's a doozy of a title. Can't she just be a spooky ghost? Anyway, Union Cemetery dates back 400 years, and it's said to be haunted by this one notable ghost. The tricky thing is, though, nobody quite knows the exact origin of who she is. Some speculate that she's a woman who lost her child in childbirth and hasn't been able to move on to the afterlife because she still seeks out her child. Others speculate that she's a ghost of a victim who had been dumped into a sinkhole near the cemetery, and she's been unable to move on while this crime goes unsolved. You know, the fact that we don't even know her name or who she is, that's probably bothering her. That's probably contributing to all her worldly stress. The only things anyone can agree on truly is that those who say they've seen her claim that she's dressed in a bright white nightgown and has her head and face concealed with a white bonnet. One particularly good ghost story, local legend, says that in the late 90s, a firefighter responding to a call nearby said a woman in a white dress jumped in front of the truck and landed behind him. When he leapt out of the vehicle, there was no body on the ground, but a dent in the hood. Naturally, such a popular local ghost story caught the attention of Connecticut natives Ed and Lorraine Warren, and this never-before-seen footage was released by Tony Spera, their son-in-law, and it's Ed filming the cemetery looking for proof of the White Lady. We'll play some of it for you now so you can get your eyes on it and you can try to make out what's happening. Ed Warren claims that in the footage you can see the ghost walking behind him in the shadows and turning to look at him. Lorraine Warren once said this evidence was so important that it had to be locked away to be studied by the New England Society of Paranormal Research. And I don't want to pop anyone's balloon here. It looks to me like they locked it away because it's not really that impressive. I personally couldn't really see anything in this, but let me know down below if you think this is smoking proof of a ghost walking through the graveyard, or if it's just some blurry lights through the fog. And if you're looking for more ghost videos, stories about Ed and Lorraine, hauntings, possessions, exorcisms, and basically anything freaky, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some on top of it. Click through, subscribe, and like, and I am certain you'll find something to suit your fears. Stay scared. Number 4. The Museum Tour. If you want to go to the world's foremost collection of haunted relics and cursed objects, there's probably no room more affected by evil than the legendary collection of the Warrens' Haunted Museum of souvenirs from their case files. Now, sadly, as of this recording, the museum is currently closed down and hopefully reopening someday soon, but in the meantime, you can take a little digital tour. As this footage posted by the Warrens' son-in-law, Tony Spera, shows Ed Warren giving a guided tour of some of the more unique and memorable haunted artifacts resting in that Connecticut garage. Now, the full video is definitely worth a watch if you're a fan of the Warrens, since it's about as close as you'll be able to get to walk around the museum these days. It's a full half-hour long of Ed Warren walking around, going into grand detail and recounting some stories about their more notable cases. Some shoutouts I'll include real quick include the witch Hannah Cranna, an old Connecticut legend, or the Conjuring Mirror, which might sound like it has something to do with the movie series, but actually refers to a bizarre case where someone used the mirror in a ritual to try and summon a demon and ended up inviting a poltergeist into his house. Ed talks briefly on some of their favorites, their cursed dolls and toys, such as a dinosaur from the Devil Made Me Do It case, and of course, no visit to the Warrens Museum could possibly exclude mention of Annabelle, who's basically the star attraction of the place and probably why anyone knows who the Warrens are and what keeps the lights on for so long. Annabelle is shown under a tight lock and key as Ed goes over her history of how they brought her in and first found her and how they eventually contained her. He touches briefly on her protocol, how she has to always be locked up in a storage box behind glass, surrounded by rosary beads and doused in holy water in an effort to keep the evil inside of her tucked away. And just a quick little small aside here from me. If a spirit is so powerful and so malevolent that it's able to possess a doll and contain unspeakable evil and attack humans, how is it thwarted so easily by a little bit of glass? I mean, I guess it's still a doll, it doesn't get demon strength, but I didn't know the solution for dealing with demons is the same way you deal with like a dog that's being kind of troublesome. You just put something around them until they can behave. Anyway, moving on. Number 3, an exorcism. To some, the ultimate paranormal dream would be getting to ride shotgun with the Warrens on one of their cases, getting to experience the paranormal firsthand under the tutelage of those who have battled it their whole lives. It would be like if Obi-Wan Kenobi picked you up on some backwater desert planet and asked if you wanted to go on a great adventure with him. It would be awesome. Well, some people get to live their dreams every day. Like me, you know, my dream was to stand in front of a camera and talk about ghosts all day long. A YouTuber by the name of Haley Reese got the rare opportunity to meet Tony Spera, the husband of Judy Warren, daughter of the family, and Lorraine Warren a bit before she passed away, and she got a blessed look into some never-before-seen footage of the pair of demonologists conducting some field work, namely an exorcism. Now, the person being exorcised, their name is Roberto, but they've been blurred out to protect their safety. Demon possession is one thing, but doxing is a whole other. We see Lorraine and Tony both fiercely conducting an exorcism, locked in a spiritual battle against the forces inside. We hear Tony asking for the demon's name repeatedly, not just because he's a friendly guy, he seems like he's pretty friendly, but because to properly drive a demon out of a host, you need to know its name. Well, just listen to what he answers with. It's gonna shock you. Beelzebub. Now, there's a bit of discrepancy whether or not Beelzebub and the devil are considered different entities, depending on the text you're reading or the mythology. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Either way, it's bad news. It's not something you would like to invite inside you. The worst part is if you're listening, apparently that's not even the only demon inside. It was like a clown car of demonic energy inside one guy. Now, thankfully, after a tough battle, they were able to get all the demons outside of him and hopefully banish them all away. Do you think it leaves like a weird taste in your mouth after you've had demonic possession? Like, you know, when you wake up, like after having a nap and your mouth just feels weird? I feel like I need to brush my teeth a few times at least afterwards. Number 4, under Scotland. Now, the Warrens' investigations did not just take them on road trips all over the United States. Now, the Warrens might have visited a case in almost every state and then some. The Warrens' journeys saw them traveling all over the globe in an effort to uncover truths and combat evil wherever it was found. In this recently posted footage, we get to see a unique perspective from the Warrens, focusing on Lorraine Warren digging around underground in the secret vaults beneath Edinburgh. Under the ground is a series of large cavernous vaults that were once used as a storage space for merchants, but when abandoned became home to Edinburgh's lowest and poorest, who began to make it their dwellings. Probably really nice, what with no daylight, musty air, a thriving rodent population, and Hey, for the right price, that honestly sounds better than most apartments in Toronto. Because of this, the vaults were the perfect place to conduct a little nefarious business, if you know what I mean. You know, all sorts of nasty crimes that aren't fit to discuss on YouTube. It's believed that two of Edinburgh's most prolific criminals hid bodies here before taking them to medical schools to sell off. So, because of its grim history, it's no surprise that people believe the vaults to be haunted, claiming they feel watched or touched when walking through them. So when supernatural weirdness happens, the Warrens are soon to follow. This one's actually pretty cool. It's kind of like going on a ghost tour from your own home. First person, making you feel like you're exploring those subterranean depths with her. The real highlight though is the guide, who's this very geriatric Scottish man who seems to know the tunnels very well. If I ever take this tour, I need to insist on my guide being an old Scottish man who I almost can't understand. That seems like the most appropriate and trustworthy way to go ghost hunting. Now, they didn't find anything too much on this investigation, but while in there, Lorraine claims that she can feel something communicating with her long ago. Could it just be the spirits from long ago, or radio feedback? Let me know in the comments. Number 3, the Donovan Poltergeist. Now, our next entry is going to cover the Donovan Poltergeist, an often forgotten case in the Ed and Lorraine Warren oeuvre. In this clip, moderator Tony Spera, he's coming up a lot in this video, mentions that Ed has told him that on a scale of 1 to 10 for demonic intensity, I love that you can rank demonic intensity like that, the Warrens found this case to be a 10. Now, I gotta ask, if it's so intense, I wonder why it's not more well known, but maybe they're keeping it hush hush because this is going to be the plot of Conjuring 4, so I'm giving you the spoilers right now. The Donovan Poltergeist case was in West Hartford, Connecticut, when a young girl had come into possession of a Ouija board, one of the most haunted Hasbro products ever released, alongside the game Sorry. Ed briefly talks about how people can be so dismissive of Ouija boards. I mean, imagine who would be so dismissive of Ouija boards. Don't know anybody like that. And Ed mentions that although they may seem innocent and unbecoming like a children's toy, a Ouija board is an invitation for spirits to come and disrupt. The girl in question in the Donovan case asked the Ouija board all sorts of questions and started to get answers that only a spirit could give. Ed says that the spirit needed something in return, and afterwards her house started to become rabid. Objects thrashed around, levitating, so on. Ed describes a violent interaction with a poltergeist, claiming that at one point during their investigation, he found himself literally pinned to the wall by a malevolent spirit. He describes as well the house being pelted with rocks from the sky and objects vanishing. Imagine the size of the umbrella you would need if it's raining rocks. This definitely sounds pretty extreme, all things considered. They claim that they would watch things dematerialize in front of their very own eyes, as if Mr. Scott was teleporting them away on the Star Trek transporter. Now, eventually, Ed describes getting in contact with a priest to perform an exorcism on the cursed house, freeing the family from spectral torment. And stay tuned to see if that's going to be the plot for Conjuring 4. I'm almost pretty sure. Number 2, the Japanese tunnels. Among the many accolades and achievement in his career before he was a ghost hunter, Ed Warren was a veteran of the US Navy and served in the Second World War and spent a good amount of time stationed around Japan. As such, from a young age, he developed an interest in Japanese folklore and the yokai and spirits that go with it. So naturally, they had to take a trip out east to go investigate some spirits there. They took a trip to Nagoya to investigate an apartment building that allegedly was being haunted by the floating head of an ancient samurai warrior. That's unnerving. I've heard of headless ghosts. I've even heard of nearly headless ghosts. But I think this is the first time I've heard of a ghost that was just a head. I think that honestly might be way scarier, just seeing a head like floating around down a hallway, but that's just me. Now, this wasn't the sole focus of their journeys though, they had more going on. The two of them also sought out an exploration of Japan's haunted tunnels, a tunnel where 200 people were allegedly buried alive after an avalanche during a typhoon trapped some 200 souls inside and made the tunnel their grave. Local reports would claim that the people would hear the screams of the damned late at night. So Ed and Lorraine visited it, and they both said it was terrifying and claimed that walking through it was freezing, the coldest thing either of them had ever experienced. Ed said a bitter cold came over him as he reached the end. He relays as well a story of a young man who tried to challenge his fear of the supernatural and ride a motorcycle right through this tunnel, but paid for it with his life and crashed. Now, for what it's worth, you know I love playing skeptic around here. You know I love getting my Scully on. I'm more of a Scully than I am a Mulder. I think this might be more of an urban legend because I did do a lot of digging for this video and I could not find any confirmed stories of a mass death inside a tunnel in Japan from an avalanche, but it's possible that it could be lost to time, very ancient, maybe records get lost, but nonetheless, interesting to listen to. And number 1, the Amityville interview. Now, the Warrens argued that the most famous case they ever worked on was the Amityville Amityville horror, and there's no denying that when this case happened, it gripped the American public. In 1973, Ronald DeFeo took a hunting rifle and went one by one, ending the lives of each one of his family members remorselessly while they slept. He would later go on to claim that he was being commanded to do it. He was compelled by spirits to act this way. A little bit later, a new family, the Lutzes, moved into the Amityville house, aware of what had transpired, but moving forward with it anyway. It's just such a good deal on rent. You gotta take it where you can get it. In this recently released footage, we hear from Ed and Lorraine speaking in great detail about their experiences working on the infamous legendary case on their TV program Seekers of the Supernatural with the Warrens. Lorraine outlines how immediately upon walking in she felt stepping into the house, she felt immediately wrong. She reiterates that upon entering, she felt a great unnerving presence. She says pretty much as soon as she entered the sewing room, she turned to the homeowner and said, "I hope this is as close to hell as I get." That's raw. The sewing room allegedly is where a focus of the haunting was, where the hundreds of flies apparated, where the spectral voices were heard telling people to get out. They speak as well of how they brought a reverend with them in the investigation who felt a physical slap in his face walking in. And if you're looking for more details about the Amityville case, the movie from the 70s and the movie with Ryan Reynolds, both pretty good retellings of the story. Ed goes on to address allegations that the Amityville case was a hoax, saying he offered a $3,000 reward for anyone who could prove to him that it was faked. Later in life, the lawyer representing Ronald DeFeo claims that the entire haunting story was a concoction he made up with the Lutzes over a bottle of wine in an effort to get a retrial for his client and drum up a bit of book business for the Lutzes. No word if he ever ended up getting $3,000 out of Ed. So whether or not the story really happened is one thing, but I think we can all agree the folklore that has come out of it is interesting enough and is a definitive part of the greater American mythos, this classic haunted house story. And it's entertaining nonetheless. Number 3, the Shadow Doll. And coming in at the number 3 spot for today is going to be this footage of the Shadow Doll. When you first enter the Warrens' haunted museum, be it digitally or physically, one of the first things you'll see is this frightening little doll, affectionately dubbed the Shadow Doll. The Shadow Doll, that's fun to say. It's made of bird feathers and real human teeth. Lovely, those are some of my favorite ingredients. Now, it's currently owned by Tony Spera. He offers a bit of insight into the doll's history, saying it was originally acquired at an antique shop where it was sold with the owners of the shop completely oblivious to the doll's cursed energy. I don't buy that at all. What do you mean oblivious to the doll's cursed energy? Somebody came to you and sold you a doll made of bird feathers and human teeth, and your first instinct wasn't to douse the thing in holy water and kerosene for good measure? I know pawn shops ain't exactly the classiest place around, but you gotta have some standards, right? You gotta be able to recognize evil. There are very few dolls with human teeth that aren't evil. Spera claims the doll has an insidious curse inside it. Oh, wait, no, sorry, the Warrens weren't insidious. Anyway, the curse says that if you take a photograph of the doll, and when it develops, you write a curse that you'd like to inflict and then send it to your victim. The person who then opens the envelope and sees the photo of the doll will invite the curse into your home. The doll is also capable of some dream magic like Freddy Krueger and can even stop your heart while you're asleep if Mr. Warren is to be believed. And I know what you might be thinking. Did you just curse all of us by showing us this footage and pictures of the doll? No, of course not. I toss a salt circle around the camera before I film anything just to make sure no residual curses pass through the internet. I will say though, I have heard some pretty credible rumors that you're more susceptible to be cursed if you don't like, comment, and subscribe after watching a video, so I honestly would say on the safe side of things, you should do that. And on another side note, having done a lot of research on the pair of these two, I cannot stress how many haunted dolls and toys these people had. They had like the world's scariest Toys R Us in their backyard.
Number 5. Satanic Worship Idol. Before we dive into the strange footage of the satanic idol, let's talk about its odd and terrifying backstory. The story of the idol begins in 1991, near Ed and Lorraine's home. There was a lost deer hunter wandering through the area, and after hours of finding no discernible landmarks or ways home, he came face to face with an odd and captivating discovery. In front of him was a large, raised rock formation, consisting of circular rocks and a strange being standing in the center of the altar. The hunter, as I believe most of us would be, felt quite uncomfortable and uneasy about this discovery. So he began making his way back to his car, but On his way, he turned to his side and noticed an elderly man with dark eyes dressed in a fully black suit walking in perfect step with him. The two hadn't shared a word, and the hunter became more anxious with each hollow step he took, still not sure of the way out of the woods. The hunter cautiously turned over to the strange man, and with a deep breath he asked, "How do I get out of here?" The strange man lifted up a frail hand and pointed towards a small overgrown path. The hunter turned to see a small pathway and then turned back to the man to thank him, but upon glancing, the man was nowhere to be seen. He disappeared as quickly as he had appeared. The hunter escaped the forest, but was so perplexed and intrigued by the strange encounter that he decided to contact none other than Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now, here's where a new, hardly known fact is revealed. Ed and Lorraine almost always investigated reports armed with a camera to capture any footage that they may have missed and for review. Ed and the hunter located the altar, and in a moment of what can only be described as white audacity, Ed removed the demonic doll from the altar and brought it back to the museum. In the footage, the strange elderly man can be seen lurking in strange corners of the screen, materializing in random positions throughout the footage. The video recording also cuts out frequently, and strange humming noise can be heard along with the glitches. Ed and Lorraine kept the footage under wraps due to the effects that the doll had on Lorraine. And if you'd like to find out more about that reasoning, check out our video on cursed artwork in the Warren Occult Museum. Number 4. Snecketer House. The Warrens are famous for their home investigations of the Perron family, the Conjuring movie inspiration, and the Amityville home. But there's a less known, very well documented case that the pair also investigated, the Snecketer House. Carmen and Al Snecketer rented a home in Southington, Connecticut, but upon exploring the house, they encountered something that would have scared me out of there faster than light. The pair discovered mortuary tools in their basement, tools that were used in the closed morgue that was in the basement of this house. The home was a funeral parlor. The only time living in a funeral home is acceptable is in My Girl. The couple began smelling rotten flesh, strong chemical odors throughout the house, and the water from the taps would randomly turn a deep red. Their sons were plagued by visions of ghosts and other strange entities. The ghosts became aggressive towards the family, and that's when they decided to call the Warrens for assistance, scared for their lives. The Warrens showed up, filming. They documented several apparitions. Lorraine reported feeling several supernatural entities, all who were filled with vengeance and bouts of pain. The Warrens deduced, within the same visit, that they believed the morticians would participate in horrendous, actually unspeakable acts with the deceased bodies brought into the home. Ed and Lorraine ended their investigation very quickly. In the tape, it's reported that the Snecketers repeatedly asked for sound advice on how to deal with their issue, but sadly, no footage beyond their questioning has been released. The Warrens' advice to the family remains a complete mystery. What do you think their advice would have been? Number 3. The Black Lace Veil. Right in the middle, we're going to talk about an event that had many eyewitnesses and was likely captured in some degree by recording equipment. Following one of their public lectures, Ed and Lorraine Warren were approached by a young couple, Alan and Lonnie. Alan had brought Lonnie to the lecture because he suspected that she was under the influence of the occult. He described a disturbance. When Lonnie became angry, her features would morph and transform into a creature resembling a wolf, and an entirely different voice would emerge from her. Just as Lorraine joined the conversation, a shocking incident unfolded. Lonnie experienced an instantaneous possession and lunged aggressively at Lorraine, utterly terrifying everyone present in the room. Ed swiftly escorted the couple to a backstage room where Lonnie was fully under possession, her face distorted into the aforementioned wolf-like appearance. After about 10 minutes, the possession subsided, and Lonnie revealed her disturbing experiences of memory loss and losing time over the past few months, which, as you know, are all very common symptoms of possession. Lonnie confessed that she had resorted to witchcraft after failing to win Alan's affections. She performed a ritual that involved a black lace veil and a crown of goat horns, renouncing her faith and swearing allegiance to Satan. In a month, Alan began showing interest, but the demonic entity had gained entrance into her life. Ed knew that Lonnie needed an exorcism and contacted a priest who arrived the same day. During the exorcism, the entity within Lonnie screamed in protest, but was eventually separated from her, vowing to return to another. The Warrens took the black lace veil, goat horns, cup, and conjuring book for safekeeping to prevent repossession. However, the story of the veil didn't end there. Months later, during a meeting with another woman who manifested multiple personalities and inhuman entities, her gaze landed on the black veil. She clutched it, her features transformed, and she became an inhuman spirit. Ed, armed with blessed water, banished the demon a second and final time. Both of these events are said to have been captured on a tape recorder, as the Warrens frequently recorded their lectures.
And number 1, Buddhist exorcism. You know, it wasn't just the United States where Ed and Lorraine worked on their cases. If there was a call for it, the Warrens would do their best to answer. Plus, I feel like if you only ghost hunt in one country, you're missing out on so many good demons and scares. If you're a fan of the channel, then you know by now just how many really fascinating cultural and regional monsters that exist out there and all the different ghost stories that exist. You know, you can spend your whole life battling demons, but have you ever gone toe to toe with a yokai or an oni? Maybe that's why the Warrens decided to take a trip to Japan in the early 2000s. Maybe they just wanted a nice vacation, or maybe they were getting tired of local poltergeists and wanted a new difficult challenge. They set out to Japan to investigate these allegedly haunted tunnels, where a number of people were reported to have died in. Ed was a former World War II Navy veteran, and he had spent a lot of time around Japan and was interested in their culture and the reports and things that he had heard. Of course, it was hardly a vacation, because while they were there, they were asked to participate in a Buddhist exorcism of a young woman named Teresa who had become the unwilling host to a litany of demons. They were aided by a group of Buddhists during their exorcism, a change of pace from their usual help from ordained Catholic ministers. We'll play it for you now so you can get some eyes on it. In the clip, we can hear Lorraine doing her level best to try and cast the evil out of the young girl's body. Now, the clip's a bit hard to watch, I'm gonna be honest. Seeing somebody writhe around screaming in what looks like agony, but luckily, they're being tended to by the experts, I guess. If there was anyone you'd want, it would probably be Ed and Lorraine and a group of Buddhists. Ed and Lorraine said the Buddhists were extremely helpful, saying they were cut from a different cloth.